What I love, about Packraft teaching is it's this like magical way to access, right, land travel and river travel. I think it's like the optimal tool to do that.
Hey y'all, this is Lizzy Scully, co-owner of Four Corners Guides and co-author of the Packraft Guide with Steve Fastbinder, aka Doom. We run a multi-sport adventure guide service out of Memphis, Colorado. So we're not going to get all fancy with this podcast. We're just going to record some Learn to Packraft and Learn to Bikeraft Q&As with our guides and other experts in the industry. And we'll throw in some fun adventure storytelling and maybe even some fireside chats that we capture out in the field or at Skullbinder Ranch. It's a catch-all podcast, so if you have questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to make them in the comments or ping us at fourcornersguides.com. We hope you enjoy this casual connection to our world. In this third episode of our podcast, I talk with renowned Packraft Instructor Jule Harle, a longtime paddler and owner of Alaska Packraft School. Jule has been instrumental in legitimizing packrafting as a sport through her work as a guide and her work with others to get the American Canoe Association packrafting curriculum in place to accredit packraft instructors across the country. She volunteers with the Alaska chapter of the American Packrafitng Association, and she was the 2023 Golden Paddle winner. Jule is coming to the Four Corners June 14th through 16th to teach a women's packrafting clinic for beginner to intermediate boaters through Four Corners Guides. There are only 4 spots left on this course. I hope you learned a lot from this interview. I sure did. Thanks so much to Jule for both taking the time to chat with me and also for coming down to boat with us and teach some of our locals.
Well, I'm really excited you're coming down, as are a bunch of folks I've chatted with. Yeah, really cool. Because I'm looking forward to learning from you. I just started packrafting 5 or 6 years ago. I was a climber for my whole adult life, but then I had an accident and I quit. So then I needed something to do. So I started mountain biking and packrafting. I'm not bold like I was when I was a climber. I'm not bold at all. So I rely on skills. I don't want to progress unless I'm really skilled. So I'm looking forward to, and I learned from Steve a lot, but it's kind of difficult sometimes to learn from your partner.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your career and how you got into paddling?
So I started as a whitewater kayaker. I'm 19 or 20 years old when I started boating. I was very aggressive and young, and my partner at the time had just written a whitewater guidebook for Alaska. And so I had a really great class 5 mentor to help me, and I didn't, have the idea of fear in my head. But I started, I started getting really scared, my second or third year into kayaking. Once I started paddling, class 4, I was like, this shit is dangerous, actually. And then I took a step back. And then, and I started packrafting right around that same time, 2007, when it was just starting to blow up in Alaska. It was still, we had those rubber ducky boats. We didn't have spray skirts, but I was doing a lot of backpacking. And so I feel I came to kind of packrafting with an advantage from a hard shell kayaker, because the nuances from learning in a hard boat that they do apply to packrafting, but they're hard to learn. I think if you're only if you haven't had a lot of time in a hard shell. And so I think it's been a really neat learning curve for me to come into packrafting as a hard shell kayaker. These days I primarily packraft because I like kind of, I like the multi-sport aspect, using them as an access tool for remote whitewater. But I think the learning, gosh, a lot of folks that haven't spent any time in a kayak, I think it's interesting to learn packrafting. So there's a few things, there's some things about, I think, hydrology and body mechanics that you miss. The initial stability on a kayak is really narrow, but the secondary stability, once you start to fall over or tip, you have a lot of recovery time. But the initial stability to packraft, they're so freaking stable. Once you start to tip over, you have no skills in your wheelhouse to help you recover, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Have you figured out a way to teach people some of those skills?
Yeah, I have. And a lot of people didn't know them because they, you know what I mean? They were hard to learn. once you're on that kind of edge of no return, I think with bracing and a lot of it, with the super nerdy terminology, American Canoe Association has all those like teaching criterias for learning and progressing in lots of river crafts, rafting, sea kayaking, river kayaking. But you do it a little bit differently than in a kayak with throwing your weight around and when you apply a paddle stroke. I'm being real nerdy right now, but it was really, really fun. The ACA, they kept saying pack rafts aren't a real boat. And so me and like a dozen people advocated, and 2 years ago, we got Packrafting approved as an ACA curriculum, like an endorsement. So it's been fun to kind of create that teaching criteria for the lower 48.
You were part of that whole process of getting the
Oh
curriculum.
yeah, I'm on the board. I'm not someone that likes being on board. I was like, damn it, I'm really, really passionate about pursuing this. But yeah, we got it voted in 2021. Folks started taking the first like ACA packrafting courses.
Yeah, we just got two of our guys, well, Steve, obviously, and then we just got one of the other of our guides to take it. And I'm not an instructor generally. It's not really my thing. I just run the business and do the hosting. But I'm going to take it anyway, just because I want to have a lot of the same skills that the rest of our guides have, just because it makes sense.
No, definitely. And I think too, as you develop kind of your own like company, like I don't know if you want to call it like protocol or criteria for teaching progression. I think it's great as a business owner to kind of know what the heck's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. We are actually working with Sion Crockford Laserer from Packraft Europe right now to sort of figure out a new curriculum for our company. And I think we'll implement it not this year, but next year. But this year, I want to implement some of the things. And I expect we'll probably learn from you as well, which is kind of exciting. But yeah, we have a general curriculum. Like these are the things you're going to learn. And then we do a lot of tailoring courses to people's needs, but we're going to try to create like a more systematic way of teaching people so they can go through the different levels with us or with someone else. Like we definitely encourage people like, go take from other people too. Like, don't.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Oh, that's awesome. And I am, so I started teaching, I call it Jule certified, that's all there was for a long time. But I've been playing around in kind of evolving my own kind of like Packraft curriculum. Gosh, I first started teaching 15 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been real fun to kind of tweak and refine mine. And yeah, I hope you guys get something from kind of my teaching progressions. Do you want me to chat about how I start, or what kind of do you want to unpack a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm interested in sort of like how and why you got into teaching, like what it is about teaching that inspires you, or
I think that there's a lot of beauty in the beginner's mind, and it's really, really fun to help somebody like evolve with a process like that. I started guiding and teaching when I was 19 years old, mostly like backpacking. And I think I just like being outside, being in river environments. But what I love, about packraft teaching is it's this like magical way to access, right, land travel and river travel. I think it's like the optimal tool to do that. And I think I really like teaching. There's some of me that likes kind of figuring out the algorithm, where I've got these kind of like outlines and itineraries, but everyone learns a little bit different. So finding, whether someone's like a kinesthetic, a visual, or an audio learner, like being able to deliver something to them that helps them like get it or progress a little bit. My goal isn't to make like anyone and everyone like, oh, I need you to be an awesome boater, but I think packrafting and any sort of outdoor exploration is really fun. I'm pretty immersed in, kind of the like the spiritual world of yoga and Ayurveda and that connection to nature. And we find in a lot of our outdoor activities. And so there's a lot of healing, a lot of good stuff that comes from being on the water. And so if I can teach someone to go pack rafting for, whatever their reasons are, and like help them feel more confident or feel safer on the water, like for me, that's a win. As I get older, all I'm trying to do is do more boating.
Yeah. And get more people out safely on boats.
Yeah. And two, I tell folks, I like teaching packrafting. I think, the culture of safety is blown up, and watching packrafts kind of watching folks start using packrafts in Alaska without much boat control or I call it situational awareness in these remote river environments, in, seeing people get hurt or rescues happen. And it's like when you go back, and you read the incident report, wow, that was 100% avoidable. Holy cow. Where most fatalities and incidences are on class 2. There's, I don't know, for me on a personal level, there's a lot of reward, I think, in teaching people, giving them what they need to know, especially in the early stages of packrafting, so they can go out and run with it and not just become better boaters, but have more fun doing the sport.
Can you recall like a specific experience with, and maybe pick a female, like that, somebody who had an amazing experience with you and called you afterwards to tell you about how your teaching affected them?
I have a couple testimonials on my website. I was really flattered that folks wrote for me. I think I value connecting with that person where they're at. I think a really good teacher doesn't just like say stuff, but kind of tries to like attune the students and teach something to them specifically. But I've gotten a lot of feedback and reports that people can learn a lot in 3 days, where they feel a lot more confident and, practicing, I call it like whitewater coaching or any sort of coaching. Having a mentor look at you and you'd be like, individualized feedback is great. And 2, I think doing it in like a group learning environment, sweet. I call it friend farms. A lot of newer packrafters or folks getting into it, they're all about, their friend group is in a similar level. And it's hard to level up unless there's someone, I think, in the group with a little bit more experience. And so I think paddling in the group courses is an opportunity for everyone to level up a little bit, with the guidance and mentorship of 1 or 2 instructors.
I guess I'm looking for like a specific story or even something that you had in a course with someone, just like, I like the aha moments, like, because I've had a lot of them myself. So, and they're always sort of fun. People are like, what? I don't.
Yeah, there's this woman 2 years ago. She had never ever packrafted before. She took the level 1. It's like intro to packrafting, all things gear. And she's like, and we actually paddled on a class 1 section of river. And then a week later, she took the level 2 course. And she had no idea she loved packrafting. And then she, a few weeks later, did the week of rivers. Her, I think, ability to progress and find out that she loved rivers, like that was super cool, where that wasn't the sport she was into, 2 months prior. And she was starting to plan and execute her own like wilderness packraft trips. She tried to learn with her husband, and her husband got scared and decided he didn't like packrafting. But she was pretty gung-ho and really into it. And that felt really cool, like just kind of turning her on to the potential of the sport, not just the multi-sport part, but how to paddle rivers.
And I am interested in hearing about your sort of progression in teaching and like how the school came about, and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started teaching for Alaska Kayak Academy. I'm really bad with years. I'm 36 years old. So I started teaching with them when I was 21. I was kind of, like an early entry whitewater kayaker. But I was teaching a lot of youth groups, like introductions to kayaking. In the Alaska Kayak Academy, they became Alaska Packrafting. And so I worked on and off with this guy, Jim Godsky, for like 12 years. But I was also, that was like very part-time. In the summer, I was also working for a lot of different outfitters because I really liked going on longer expedition style trips. So I was teaching lots of remote raft trips guiding a lot of remote raft trips in the Brook Range for like 2 weeks. And we started integrating packrafting into the company. And so I was mainly doing working for those 2 outfitters for like 12 years. And then, kind of being an independent contractor in the guiding world, picking up other random trip opportunities that sounded really fun. I guess I saw kind of a niche for starting the Alaska Packraft School. And I was like, man, like, good luck, you guys. But I think if I'm this passionate about what I think is a good idea, starting my own business is probably the move. And 2, having guided and taught for so long, I think for about 13, 14 years before I started my own business. I always said I'd never own a business because there's so many ins and outs, with the running a business behind the scenes. But I guess I saw that there was such a demand in Alaska for more and more like quality packraft instruction. And there was this like need that wasn't being met. So this will be the third summer we're operating. There is such a need, I think, for quality instruction. And a lot of folks were going through the outfitter I was working for because there wasn't much else going on in Alaska. Turning and kayak does a little bit in Hope. And Kennecott Wilderness Guides, they do a little bit in McCarthy, but it's a 7-hour drive away from Anchorage. And the owner of another Packraft outfit in Hope, he's kind of steering away and trying to do more Airbnbs. So I saw the potential for a lot of work, and I really am passionate about teaching packrafting and getting folks on the water. And that just happened to be at the time I was writing the guidebook. That was a COVID project.
Yeah, I wrote a book too. I wrote the Packraft guide during the COVID.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Seriously. And I meditate a lot. And in meditation, I got this download. I was like, "You're going to write a book." And I was like, "That's weird."
Cool. Awesome.
No, but COVID summer, right? I wasn't working that much like a lot of people. And so I turned going on to trips and documenting them into a job. And there's 70 runs in there, and I'd done most of them already, especially with a background kayaking and as a packrafter. And my friends that were not guiding, they also had tons of free time. So it was just kind of like summer camp.
Nice.
For 3 months. And so that's how the book evolved. And, the light bulb went off like, well, if I'm the author of the Packraft guidebook, it'll be really, really easy to start a business with packrafting. And that's been such a positive thing for me. So with a lot of my friends as packrafters, kind of running through, the first year, the Alaska Packraft School, it was just me. I didn't hire any independent contractors, but I had friends, right, that wanted to learn more and practice a lot of these safety skills. So my friends would like assist with courses for free.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it was so cool. Most of my Packraft friends, they don't have a background in hardshell kayaking, but it was really, really cool opportunity to help them progress as boaters, and also, have some safety or folks help me out teaching the courses on the water. And then this season, I looked at, I turned so many people away the first season with the Alaska Packraft School because it was just me teaching. Like I couldn't do it all. I was like, all right, I guess, we've got to train more instructors, and it feels really cool. Like everyone on the staff team are friends of mine. So it's been this like growing business where my friends are like, they're all my personal trip partners for packrafting, also guides and whatnot. But it's been cool getting their feedback and kind of co-creating teaching objectives and curriculums with them. It's been a really fun process. I think turning my passion into a job, and then being able to do it with my friends that I packraft with personally. After me and half a dozen people or so got the packrafting curriculum approved by the ACA, my friends and I kind of joined up together and took the first ever packraft course offered Patrick Higgins taught in Alaska. Gosh, that's kind of the packraft story, in a nutshell.
Can you talk a little bit now about like how you teach women and how you sort of figured out how to teach women and in what ways it's different?
I used to run this business, Alaska Yoga Adventures, and it was doing yoga retreats, but in the wilderness. So not super bougie, but backcountry travel in addition to yoga. And those were primarily women groups. And so that's when I got my first exposure teaching to women specific. And that's when the light bulb went off. Like, there is sometimes a different learning environment that happens. I think, that, I don't know if you want to call it like girl power or feminine energy, but there's this slightly different atmosphere, I think, for women's courses. And then learning a little bit about learning styles. There's a part of the brain that's twice as big in a female that processes new experiences or manages fear through talking. So a learning style with literally me teaching something and asking questions and talking it through. I didn't see that as much in a male learning environment, but I saw a lot of women's learning environments. On a personal level, I love hanging out with women. So they're fun courses for me to teach. But too, there's a lot, I think, of ladies that have come into packrafting and trying to learn from their boyfriends or partners that don't, I think, have as much experience in the fear game or too, there are, I think, some physical, every body is different, but too, smaller people that don't have more muscle mass or a bigger skeletal structure, it's not a disadvantage, but there are things that are, I think, harder, like getting back into the boat or accessing some of these paddle strokes. Because I think, as myself being a petite person, I'm like 5'2", I got to figure out kind of some life hacks for those.
Cool. I can't wait to learn them. Do you have a specific different type of curriculum, or is it just that you're intuitively, because you've learned over the years, teach women's courses and courses or men's courses differently?
Yeah, the actual curriculum is the same. Like we're learning the same set of paddling skills. And I call it situational awareness, like reading whitewater, what to think about, what to look for. And then too, I think I offer lots of stories too. They're a little bit relatable. Like, hey, I've made every mistake you can possibly make as I was figuring out how to learn the sport. But too, I think creating that like safe, judgment-free learning environment. The first thing I mentioned to folks, there's no such thing as a dumb question. There's a reason why we're all here together trying to learn. And if they've got a dumb question, well, someone else probably has it too. If it's going through your head, I probably messed that up. So I'd love to share with you what I found out. And I think there's a little bit this too. These are generalizations and not always true, but I think when you start like a learning environment like that, people, I think, don't have the need to preserve their egos or feel embarrassed or inferior.
Do you think that's something that happens with women more often?
I think it can be. I think anyone can feel embarrassed or inferior, but I think if you're coming into a sport that is challenging and you're learning with like a male group that doesn't feel as scared, or they have physical advantages, I think there's a lot of things you can tell yourself, whether it's, I'm not like big enough, I'm not strong enough, or, I don't know why I'm scared, the like self-talk when you're learning a new sport. And I think I do a really good job. My life mantra, I had two of them when I was starting the Packraft School. One of them was lower the bar. I don't think you have to get as good as you think really quickly, and then keep it fun. Where, we call it optimal arousal theory. If you're always in that place where you're scared when you're learning, you're right. The fight or flight response kind of gives us tunnel vision and we're actually not learning newer things. But the optimal arousal is slowly gaining skills along with this place where we're having fun, but we feel like our limits are tested. And so it's different for everybody, but a lot of the things I teach are challenged by choice. I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. And I think that gives people like a lot of confidence or a lot of like power in their own progression. And when folks, I think, are, scared to do something, we'll talk about why, like, kind of assess the reality of the perceived risk. And I think there's a lot of misconceived risk assessment when folks are learning whitewater. And so I think too, getting that explained or unpacking that is something I do more in women's courses.
Interesting. I'm wanting to reflect with you on some experience I had. I've done the Grand twice, but I am so afraid of the Grand. And the second time I did it with Steve, and it was overwhelming. I didn't even want to boat for like 6 months after that. But I love the Grand. It's so beautiful. I really want to do it again. But like right now, I'm like, I am so scared. Even though it's not like I've swam a ton in the Grand Canyon. I've swam 15 times between my two trips. I've swam plenty. I swam lava. I swam everything. But I'm so afraid that I haven't done it in a few years, even though I've had opportunities because of this fear. And it's almost unreasonable because I've done it already twice. But I am like, will I ever do it again? I'm not sure. I want to get over this fear, but I don't know how. Have you ever confronted anything like that? I mean, it seems unreasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's funny too. So I'm my side hustle, not side hustle. It's my full-time gig in the off season. I'm a mental health counselor. So I work mostly with PTSD survivors with anxiety and depression. And it's really interesting, what I've learned about PTSD. It's hard to break through PTSD through the intellect because that's not where traumatic memories are stored, in that part of the brain where, you can rationalize all you want. Like, okay, this isn't dangerous, or it's not my fault, or I am safe, but you don't believe it. right? Even though like all of this logic and reason is pointing in that direction. So even too, you know, when folks have had a bad swim or they've almost drowned or they're just scared, being in that fight or flight response, it's like hard to talk someone out of that. But somatically, right, it's like bilateral stimulation, right, left, right, left, right, left. You can work through it. You know, I don't know if you know about EMDR.
I have heard of it, and I've actually thought about doing it, but I haven't yet.
You should explore that. It's really a therapy where you're doing a lot of bilateral stimulation. Because so PTSD is stored in like the limbic system, like the lower structures of our brain, but the higher cortical functioning is like up here within the prefrontal cortex when we're in that relaxed state or we're experiencing joy. And you can automatically induce that. So when I say bilateral stimulation, right, left, right, left. So walking, biking, paddling, you know, doing movement while you think about that thing is one way to slowly rewire the brain and create different neural networks. And so I think it's really interesting, you know, if someone is real scared paddling, if you make it easier or like, you know, give them a little bit of confidence or show them that they can do it, like while they're boating, that's that bilateral stimulation. You can slowly, I think, work with somebody's interpretation of fear or their PTSD around it.
Well, I stepped back a lot since the last time I did the Grand, and that was 2 years ago. And I haven't really, I've just been doing really mellow, not, you know, like pushing a little bit, maybe 3+, but it's still like, but I still can't quite, maybe it's just going to take me a few more years. I don't know, but, or maybe I need some concentrated, like focus working with someone.
Yeah. And too, like, don't rush the process, right? Like, imagine if you went out and paddled class 350 times and you had tons of fun. You know, that's, you know, the different neural networks you make, or, you know, you have a different relationship with boating, you know. And then two, I think really getting better with the self-rescue game. There was years when I was boating, I had a giant packraft when I was running a packraft, and I couldn't get in my boat. It was like a medium classic, which is way too much boat for me. I'm too small for that. And I couldn't get back in. And so I think too, really helping folks with the wet exit, wet reentry. And so I think anything that you have a lot of fear over, once you have a little bit of skill mastery, right, that fear loses its power. And then you're able to have more fun. And for me, it was just like getting back into my boat. And so the courses are great, you know, because we'll kind of create these scenarios too. And I think, you know, when you go boating and, you know, and everyone's scared, it's like, oh, wow, I don't know that you'd be able to help me if I needed it. So I think really spending time, not just on skill development, but we kind of practice control. I call it controlled chaos. I like to paddle rivers. I look for venues that are, you know, relatively safe, but really practicing, you know, when your plan A doesn't work out. So presenting kind of hairball scenarios for some plan Bs, because everything, you know, we can have the theory, but paddling is 1% theory, 99% practice. It's just practicing, I think, a lot of these skills, but I try to make the environment really fun.
Cool. Oh, I'm so looking forward to you being here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time because it's been 45 minutes, but do you have is there anything I'm not asking you that you want to share with me about packrafting, teaching, the upcoming course, anything?
Are folks pretty familiar with their gear when they show up?
Oh, it totally depends. For this course, I'm saying no beginners, so they have to have taken one of our courses, or they basically have to have a basic understanding of packrafting in the river. So it just, for us, it depends. But the course that you're teaching is beginner intermediate. So people might be on the spectrum, but they will all know how to use their boats and blow them up and get on the water and use their PFDs and paddle at least. So that's like
cool. That's great. That's I used to teach, you know, intro to whitewater, but folks were showing up with no experience, you know, and like putting their PFDs on backwards. And none of that's right, or none of that's like wrong or bad. Everyone's got to learn somewhere. But having, I think, that difference in skills, it was hard to meet everyone's learning objectives, you know, with like, I think, such a variety of paddling backgrounds. So I think, yeah, being familiar with their gear is, yeah, that's I think pretty essential for this type of course. But even then, you know, I call it a like we call it boat fitting. Everyone blows up their boats, puts on their gear, and I do a quick hash 101 about the best gear for what we're doing, ins and outs and why, especially with outrigging and with how people sit in their boats. There are a lot of like advantages, like, oh, if you sit an inch further forward, you can do this, or if you adjusted your thigh straps, you'll have like better edge control. So that's something we do right off at the get-go, but it really takes forever and takes a whole lot out of our time together if you're teaching them, from square one.
Yeah, well, what my goal would be is I hope that I can, if it works out, bring you down every year, which would be amazing. Anybody who can't take the course this year because they are just very beginner, I would encourage them to take one of our courses, one of your courses, somebody's course, and then come back and do something with you next year if that works out. That would be my dream for my company.
I'd love that. I think I was telling you, the water gets so high up here. In the last 2 years, like this year, I actually canceled my first course ever right around solstice weekend. Well, we had such a unique event where we had our snow hold on really late. So we had tons of snow high in the Alpine, like in June, that had usually melted off. But we had a high snow year and a really cold spring. And then we got 2 days of rain. And so the rain, right, like all the snow in the mountains melted. And then it got really hot. So when the glaciers turned on, like a lot of rivers doubled in volume.
Wow.
In less than 3 hours. And I was like, holy shit, like we cannot teach in this environment. There's just, wood moving and just super fast. And that's not quite to last year's severity, but that is, I've been living in Alaska for 17 years. That's a pretty reliable time of year for water to get too high too fast. And so I swore off teaching around solstice last year, at least taking like kind of this 10-day window.
Oh, perfect. Well, generally, the good thing about this area is the Animus always runs. So we can always do stuff in the Animus. And the cool thing about the Animus is like, if it's really low, you can send even like beginner intermediate through the play park. If it's really high, then you go to a different part of the river. And then also if it's low, you can go and do Rockwood, or you can go up and do the upper Animus, not with clients, but like for you coming down to have fun with us. So that 10-day window is really awesome for the Animus. And then if we have a big snow year, then we have the Dolores, which is just like brilliantly fun and beautiful. I mean, it's our wilderness. We don't have a whole lot of like long runs with lots of class 3. It has like I think a class, well, it's not really a class 5. It's like a 4+, but like we don't have much of that. But when we have a big snow year, like we did in 2023, we got on that river, I think 6 times, and Steve did it 10 because so many of our clients wanted to do it. So that's a good time of year to come here too.
Oh, cool. Awesome. I love exploring new areas and checking out new runs.
And you'll love our place too. And if the Mancos River is running, it ran all this year. It's like 35 miles into the Mountain Ute Tribal Park, and it's class 3, but it's a creek. No, like we are the only people who boat it because you can't boat it. It's illegal, but we own property on the river, and then we get permission from the tribal park. Like nobody else can boat this river except us. It's crazy. And our friends. So because it goes to Mesa Verde National Park is over there, and then the Mountain Ute Tribal Park is there, and then we have Weber Canyon here. So there's 2 canyons that come together, and they go into another canyon to the Mountain Ute Tribal Park. Yeah, and the Mancos it only runs every once in a while, but when it runs, it's like super fun. So.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Lizzy, for reaching out. Yeah, I'm stoked to spend some time with you guys down there and go boating and teach a little bit in your community.
Yay. All right. Well, have a wonderful day.
All right. You too. Bye, Lizzy.
Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning into our A Beginner's Guide to Packrafting and Bike-Rafting podcast. If you liked this show, please give us a shout out on Google Podcasts, Podbean, or wherever you found us online. You can find the show notes for each episode on our website at fourcornersguides.com. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at fourcornersguides@gmail.com. Thanks. Have a great day.